Shift happens, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance. And when it does, you have two options. You can either cling to the life you've outgrown or step into the version of you that knows she's meant for more. I'm Gia Lacqua, trauma-informed empowerment coach and founder of Radical Prioritization. Welcome to What the Shift, the podcast for women who've outgrown the life they've built and are ready to create one that finally fits. Here we get real about the shifts that change everything: identity shifts, career pivots, relationship resets, mindset breakthroughs, and learning how to finally release what's holding you back. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just be ready for what's next. It's time to shift. Hey, it's Gia. Quick check-in. Are you thriving or just functioning at a really high level? If your to-do list is never done, if you're the go-to for everyone else but feel invisible in your own life, if you're exhausted from doing all the things but still feel like it's never enough, you might be overfunctioning. Take 2 minutes and find out. Go to my website, gialacqua.com, and on the homepage, you will find the quiz. I created it for high achievers who are doing too much for too many with too little in return. So this is your wake-up call. Stop surviving and start shifting. All right, let's get into it. If you feel like life is shifting, you're in the right place. I'm Gia Lacqua, and welcome to What the Shift. Today, I am so excited to introduce you to Grace Secker. Grace is a licensed therapist, certified yoga therapist, and nervous system coach. She's the founder of Heal with Grace, a private practice dedicated to integrative therapy and coaching. Grace created the mind-body healing method and healing program designed to help people break free from chronic pain and sensitivity disorders. She's also the host of Heal with Grace podcast, where she explores the deep connection between the mind and body and healing. With a passion for empowering others, Grace helps people reclaim the life they love by addressing the root cause of mental and physical distress. As a teacher of teachers, she shares her expertise on treating mind-body chronic symptoms, equipping professionals with the tools to guide others on their healing journey. Grace, so happy to have you join us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Gia. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited for today's conversation.
Yeah, this is an important topic and one we don't talk enough about. So excited to chat with you. Tell us, just before we dive into the good stuff, a little bit about your background and what led you to the work that you're actually doing today.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a journey, and it started pretty early. And I won't take you through all the details, but I became a therapist truly because I was put in therapy, thankfully, as a teenager. And I say that it saved my life. It was incredible. It was a safe place that I could go. And that's what I wanted to do for others. So I went straight to school, straight to grad school, became a licensed therapist, and was doing pretty good therapy, traditional psychotherapy, if you will. While then I, starting in grad school, had a huge downfall in my health. I had a lot of chronic pain to the point where I didn't understand what was going on. I was a stressed out grad student. I had a huge breakup. Like, life was just hitting. I was in my early 20s and went to all the doctors, all the things. And finally, and mind you, again, I was in school to be a therapist, but we don't talk about this. I mean, it's not talked about in schools at all. Finally, someone referred me to a psychologist who specializes in what I specialize now. And within about 6 months, like 95% of my pain went away. And I was having all types of like fibromyalgia pain. And it's funny because after that, I didn't really do much with it. I didn't think much of it. I just kind of moved on with life. I was like, okay, well, that was that. And all right, cool. I'm going to keep going. And fast forward a few years later, I had a whole other like bout of chronic illness and symptoms and fatigue and gut issues, histamine reactions, like the whole thing. I didn't put two and two together, but finally, after like a couple of years of going down the whole rabbit hole of functional doctors and practitioners and everything, I found this work again, like nervous system and brain training work. And within a few weeks, some of the worst symptoms I had went away. And so that was my light bulb of like, oh, I have to do this professionally. Like, I don't have to suffer forever. I want people to know they don't have to suffer forever. So that was about 5 years ago. And that has been my full focus now. I am so focused on just getting the word out there that you don't have to suffer physically, chronically for the rest of your life, despite probably what you've been told by practitioners. And
Mhm.
I say that with the most respect for other people, other practitioners. They are doing the best work they know how to do. I was doing the best work I know how to do, right?
Sure, based on what they're trained in.
Exactly what you're trained in. We just don't know. So I'm a part of big community that is trying to get that word out there that there's a different.
Incredible. I love that. And so it was like the boomerang that kept coming back to you until it hit you in the head.
Yep. It's like,
Amazing.
hello, look at this.
Yep.
You're not like,
Yep.
I mean, you can't not. Your body feels like it's failing you. So yeah.
Amazing. So I know there's a lot of different theories based on the various communities, schools of thought. Tell us from your perspective, what is the hidden root cause of chronic pain and fatigue?
Yeah. Pain, and then I'll just say this first, pain in and of itself is a brain response. So, for example, I put my hand on a hot stove, right? There are sensations that go into your hand. That's not pain first. Those sensations go up to your brain, and your brain says, oh, is this bad or good? Let me categorize this as danger. Okay, danger. You're going to send sensations back down to your hand to
Mhm,
feel pain, to feel
mhm.
heat. That is a really wonderful way to feel pain, right? Like we need that. We need those
Yeah.
sensations.
Or
We
when I
need
step on a Lego.
exactly. Exactly. We need our brains to say that's not good. Please stop. With chronic pain and chronic symptoms, your brain is essentially sending that danger signal over and over and over to your body when it's not actually needed. And so your brain is stuck in that danger response, which also interacts with the nervous system that is stuck in the stress response. And so
Mm,
there's just messages sending back and forth from your body to your brain, to your brain, to your body saying, we're not okay. We are in danger mode. And the only way to get your attention is through the physical sensations because physical health is more accepted than emotional or mental health, right? Like there's way more practitioners we can go to for physical health usually than mental or emotional, or it's just
sure.
more societally accepted.
Sure. Interesting. So, as I hear you talking about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds almost like analogous to anxiety, where there's an alarm going off in your body, but there's no actual danger, but there's this perception of danger that doesn't exist. But this is sort of a physical manifestation.
Exactly. And actually, great point. Great point for with anxiety. Anxiety is actually just another symptom of the stress response. It is not a feeling, even though we might say we feel anxious. It is a sensation. It is a symptom. It's a cause. It's a coping mechanism.
Mm.
And so, yes, exactly. Just why some people are like, I'm always anxious, but I don't know why. Yeah, same with pain and symptoms.
Interesting. Okay. So, having understood that, tell us what, for those who may not be as familiar, talk to us about what somatic therapy is and what it can actually do for us.
Yeah, so soma, it means the body. That word means the body. So somatic therapy is body-based therapy. So there's a couple different schools of thought with therapy. Traditional psychotherapy, we think of the mind, right? Like mental health, and that is we say top down. So cognitive therapy, different ways of thinking, going into your psyche, understanding that, all wonderful, and that is more top down approach. So, mind affecting the body. With somatic therapy, we think body affecting the mind. So, for the example of anxiety, I say this all the time, even before I specialized in this. I've always been some sort of mind body practitioner
Mhm.
because I understand the value of both. And so, I would say that if people think of anxiety, a lot of times we think of like catastrophic thinking, constantly thinking about something. We can't stop it. We're so worried about something. It's just over and over and over. If you actually tune into the body, there's usually some sort of sensation. Maybe that's like a tight chest or an upset stomach or antsy feeling or like tight shoulders or muscles. And that's the body response to mental health, to anxiety. So sometimes we can't just stop the thoughts, right? I say this all the time. Like if you could just stop anxiety in your mind or depression in your mind, thoughts like that, you wouldn't come to therapy, right? You'd be able to fix it or change it. And so sometimes we got to look at the body and approach that first, approach those sensations of antsiness and like uncomfortability, and then that can alleviate the mind. But also
Mhm.
vice versa. I truly believe we need both. There's a big push for somatic therapy right now, which is amazing. We're recognizing, oh, there's there's a lot to do with the body. At the same time, we also want to address the mind. So I'm a big proponent of understanding that top down and bottom up approach.
Yeah, it's an important one. And I think especially for high achieving women who are doing all the things, because speaking from personal experience, I became very disconnected from my body, ignored symptoms for many years, pushed through until my body screamed and was like, no, you are not ignoring me any longer. Right. And so I think that mind body connection and getting back in tune with yourself is so important. And I love the way you explained, sometimes the therapy is more of the mind to body connection, whereas somatic is more body to mind. And they're certainly interrelated. And it's not just woo woo, there's neuroscience that backs that up. So I love that it's becoming more commonplace in the healing world. I think that's incredible. So, along those lines, what would you say? What role does the nervous system play when it comes to chronic pain?
So the nervous system is kind of like your information highway between your brain and your body. There's signals going up and down that information highway all the time, from your spine to your organs to your muscles to everything. Same to your brain. And our nervous system is kind of like I described as the brain. It can be a bit of an alarm response. So, for example, if you're in the car and someone is about to cut you off, you want your fight flight response to turn on and be like, "Oh, I need to swerve or I need to get out of the way." Right? That's a very appropriate response. But as I said, kind of with the brain, sometimes we get stuck in that fight or flight or freeze response where our body is on guard all the time, or we're shut down all the time. And maybe that's where fatigue comes in, depression comes in. I call it the ultimate shutdown response, is that dorsal vagal, that fatigue. And so when we're in that chronic state, it affects anything from mental, physical, emotional health. I mean, it can shut our bodies down in so many ways. We know very much so by many different doctors and practitioners and studies now that like our bodies hold on to that stress response because over time we have been in different experiences in life that have pushed us way far outside what we call our window of tolerance. And that means anywhere from big T trauma, like trauma that everyone understands of, physical, emotional, natural disasters, things like that, to just difficult experiences like being bullied or not being paid attention to or being neglected and things like that. And so when that happens over and over, our nervous systems don't really know how to handle that, don't really know what to do with it. And so it's just like, I can't be in that anymore. So I'm going to shut you down and send you these signals. So working with the body helps us find a little bit more, or like tells our bodies, tells our nervous systems, actually, we're not there anymore. We're not in that stress place. We're here. We're okay. We find safety, which that's another tangent and I can go into if that's appropriate. But
Yeah.
what we need is to help our nervous systems find a little bit more of that relaxed rest and digest state.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this too, that we are not looking for the perfect place. We're not looking to be zenned out, rest and digest all the time. We need, like I said, with the car example, we need to go into fight or flight and then come back to rest and digest. We need both. And so it's helping us get back to that rest and digest more often than not when we're stuck in the stress response.
Yeah, so much there I want to dig into. So it's coming, how do we come back to that baseline? Because we are going to have ups and downs. There is a concept that I love to talk about, which is allostatic load, and it's the cumulative wear and tear on your body. So it's that build and build and build and build to the point where your baseline just continues to elevate and you don't come back to that state of calm. And so I think that happens to a lot of women. But you mentioned trauma. So just, I guess, let's first talk about how does, from the work that you do and your, experience and expertise, how does trauma affect our health?
So first and foremost, I want to give a definition of trauma. Trauma is, I love this really short, simple one. Trauma is too much, too fast, too soon, which means that it can look like anything. Trauma can look like anything to anyone. It does not need to look like some huge event or some horrible abuse that you've had in your life. It could, totally could. But trauma is too much, too fast, too soon for your nervous system. So, what is trauma to someone is definitely maybe not be trauma to someone else. And so, when that happens to our nervous systems over time, like you said, it can build up to the point where our nervous systems don't know what to do anymore. And so we break down, or we get really stressed out, or we don't know what to do anymore. And especially with high achieving women, I work honestly almost mostly with that, because there's a very strong correlation with high achieving, perfectionism, and anxiety with chronic symptoms, because all of those contribute to this idea that we have to hold ourselves in a certain way to be accepted and to be worthy. And when we do that over and over and over again, and we hold ourselves in that place, we're not actually being true to who we are. And it's exhausting to our nervous systems. Yeah.
That is such a powerful point. So some of us are stuck in that fight or flight survival mode and we don't even realize it. I was there just day to day. There was no coming out of it. It was just constant for me, which eventually caught up with me, right? I mean, the physical symptoms were very loud and clear. And then for some of us, the dip comes, which is we're so overwhelmed, so overloaded that we become numb. And that's what I think is now more commonly talked to as the functional freeze, the dorsal vagal, where we're done. We got nothing left to give. There's nothing in the tank. And we're just going through the motions. So I guess the $1,000,000 question is, if we're in the survival mode, fight or flight response, if we're stuck in either one of those states, or the dorsal vagal state, the functional freeze mode, what needs to change? What do we need to do? What needs to happen?
So there's multiple layers to that. But the first thing that I will say is it does take courage, really, and bravery to look at actually what's creating that. What are the patterns that we're in, right? How are you holding yourself on a day to day? What are you doing, or maybe not doing for yourself, that maybe you're doing for everybody else but
Yep.
you, right? That's a very common one. How
Sure.
much are we taking care of everyone else and everything else around us other than ourselves? And sometimes I get it. That can be like an eye roll, like, yeah, I get it, but I care about others. No, it's really something you need to look at 100%. And probably has been a very long pattern in your life that you've learned from others, you've learned from family, learned from society. There's this in between with women these days where we have this amazing ability to be really wise for ourselves and for others. But we've also taken on this idea that we have to handle everything and be in control, and we're not able to actually release and let go and receive. And so when we hold ourselves so much over time, like you said, it becomes normal, totally becomes normal. So kind of have to start taking a look at, where are you holding so much and trying to control so much that you're afraid of letting go. Like, it's scary, I get it. But it is something to look at. And also, truly, what's your routine like? What's your sleep habits like? Whenever someone's in that true stress response and we're not really sure what's going on, let's get back to the basics. How are you sleeping? How are you eating? How are you moving your body? How are you taking care of yourself? And what kind of support systems do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the easiest and sometimes the hardest things to look at, but actually really important, that we dismiss a lot of the times.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure, because we're too busy going and doing. And
Exactly.
it is a hard mindset to shift, like you said, when it's sort of been ingrained in us from such a young age that it becomes part of our identity and it becomes part of just who we are, right? For me, it was, oh, it's my personality. No, it's how we're wired and you can rewire it. But again,
Mhm.
like you said, it takes a lot of courage, curiosity, introspection to get really to look inwards and figure out like where am I doing this and why am I doing it, to undo that. And so I think that mindset shift of putting yourself last, or you're not even on the list, to no, I need to not only be on the list, I need to be at the top of the list. It's a very hard mindset shift. And the thing I like to talk a lot about in my work is, just reading the quote on Instagram or reading a post is not going to change the mindset, because it is so deeply ingrained in your subconscious beliefs, right? So that's where we have to do the real work around the rewiring of the subconscious. And so, but that again is really hard and very hard to do on your own. And so I think that's where it is really powerful to have a therapist, or some sort of coach help you through that. So you talked about safety before, which I want to come back to.
Yeah.
So whether you're dealing with chronic pain,
Mhm.
fatigue, fibromyalgia, anxiety, what role does safety play in nervous system regulation, and how should we think about that?
So when you're stuck in that stress response and you're having anywhere from chronic physical illness, symptoms, pain, anxiety, anything, or you're in that functional freeze state, your nervous system categorizes that yourself where you are in life as not safe. And what I mean by that is that it's not operating most likely from the present moment. It's operating from all the things from your past and also probably how you're holding yourself right now that's not aligned with you. And so safety can mean so many different things. And it doesn't mean that we're going to shift overnight into, okay, I'm going to go to a beach and just heal for a few months. People have tried that. It does
Yeah.
not work. It doesn't. It
It
truly
sounds
doesn't.
nice.
You can have the best environment and you still feel completely unsafe. You don't feel okay. So, safety sometimes means to tell yourself, I'm okay by not being okay. That's okay as well. When I say that for your nervous system, it means to have this true, like this exhale of it's a felt sense, kind of like you mentioned, there's a shift in beliefs that we need instead of just looking at a post or thinking differently. Safety is a felt sense of warmth, of comfort, of release, of even just a little bit of okayness in our bodies. Do you feel that maybe with a partner or someone that you feel at home with? How can you help that? How can you help yourself feel that for you? And to your point, we can do this a lot for ourselves, but there's a lot of power and co-regulation with a trusted person, a therapist, a coach, someone like that. Because a lot of times, as I mentioned about trauma, when it's too fast, too much, too soon, it's not just about that trauma, it's that we were left alone with it. And so when we're left alone with these feelings of inadequacy, of not enoughness, of not good enough, not courageous enough, not worthy enough, that wreaks havoc on our nervous systems as well. So when we can have that supportive system with someone to actually hold us in that and to see our true selves, see like what our pain points are, that provides safety as well. And I'm kind of going on many different examples and tangents right now, but that is safety, is that place where we can settle even just a little, just like a little bit back in your chair instead of like really holding your muscles and holding yourself really tight. Right? Does that make sense?
It does. I think the trauma part is important, and the definition you gave helps around the capital T and the lowercase t, because sometimes it is about what you didn't get and
Uh-huh.
how you still hold on to that. And as we know, body keeps the score, right? And it lives in our nervous system. And so I love the example you gave of you can be on a beach for 3 months and still not feel safe. Because if you don't feel safe in your own body, you're not going to feel safe anywhere. So I think that is incredibly powerful, and a really important awareness for those women who are stuck in one of those states. So
Yeah.
I think that's good context. What would you say? How do we, regulate from the inside out, and what does regulated look like?
So regulation is a practice. So I like to say that it's more of that than a state of being. Kind of like I said, this rest and digest place is an in and out. We want to kind of like ebb and flow between that, right? We want to be there more often than not, right? Than the more often than the stuck place or the stress, fight, flight, or freeze. But regulation is truly practicing keep coming home to you. So often we are dismissing ourselves, kind of like you mentioned earlier. I just wasn't even connected. Regulation means connected. And when I mean connect, what I mean by connection is anywhere from truly just being with your breath for a second, not trying to figure out what you're noticing, not trying to figure out what's going on, not trying to fix anything. But regulation means being with whatever is present. And that means the hard parts, the grief, the sadness, the unworthiness, the happiness, the love, the excitement, the warmth, like being with it all is regulation. Because what happens is when we don't want to, when we avoid those emotions, those states of being, is when we get stressed and we get stuck. And so it's not about releasing them, getting rid of them, the hard emotions, things like that. It's about being with them and being with
Mhm.
those parts that are harder to be with. That is true regulation, when we can like be, I literally in my mind, I imagine this like table of all my parts sitting together and we're like able to be there together and hold it all.
Yeah, yeah, as you said that, I'm thinking of like the Inside Out characters. There's
Yes,
space for all of them.
exactly.
But along those lines, what would you say is that connection between emotional suppression
Mm.
and physical pain?
Yeah, that's a very strong one. And to some people in this community, that is literally your ticket out of pain, is feeling the emotions. Um, so it is shown time and time again, studied time and time again by people like Dr. John Sarno was the creator of tension myositis syndrome. Dr. Gabor Mate talks about this a lot in terms of more and more suppression of emotions leads to a stuck stress response, stuck danger signals in your brain, which leads to chronic pain. And so when we can be with those emotions, we can express them, we can allow them to be there and be okay for them to be not okay,
Yeah.
essentially. Then our bodies don't have to send us signals of pain because it's not protecting us. So essentially, what's happening is your brain and your body are protecting you from those emotions that you never learned how to feel and that you never learned was okay to feel, right? Like, think about it this way. I mean, growing up, so much of what we're taught is that anger is not okay. You can't express anger, right? Like, don't do that. That's bad.
Especially for
Or
women, right?
especially
Yeah.
for women. Or if you're sad, something's wrong and you need to fix it. You need to figure it out, right? Someone will ask you that. What's wrong? Are you okay? With sadness. And it probably comes from a loving place, but actually you get the message that it's not okay to feel that when you
Yeah.
get those questions.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of work, and truly, if we're allowed to feel that and express it and be with those difficult emotions, whether that's present in your life or maybe that's from your past, um, relieving them in a way, being with them. And like I said, not getting rid of them. We're not trying to like get them out and never feel them again, but being with tells your brain it's safe to do that. It's okay
Mhm.
to feel.
To ride the wave.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love
exactly.
that. What would you say are common mistakes that people make in trying to be healthy? We talk about being healthy, we talk about living, a healthy lifestyle. Wellness is a multi-billion dollar industry. What mistakes are people making?
A few. Um, I'll say this first, that actually, more often than not, it's how we're approaching it rather than what we're doing. So, what I mean by that is if you are trying a certain diet to help your body and you're approaching it from this place of rigidness and control, and if you mess up one day, then you're a failure, that puts a lot of stress and pressure on your body, on your mind, on your nervous system. And so that's very different than saying, you know what, I'm choosing these foods because it feels really nourishing and yummy and supportive for my body. And that is such a different place. There's this less like constriction and rigidness and more of an openness and flow and love that you're sending when you do that.
And sustainability.
And sustainability, exactly. Same with movement. Honestly, that's why I say it is the first thing. The way you approach your health and your life says way more than anything else.
So it's the mindset behind
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, the intention, I like to say the intention
Intention.
behind it. And then there really are some specific things that I truly believe we're getting wrong. I think that the more we focus so deeply on the physical and less about the mental and emotional and spiritual side of things, we really are getting away from the fact that we're all one. It's all connected, mind, body, spirit. Right. And so there's so much push on diet, on movement, on supplements, on protocols, on
Yeah.
so many things. We're human, and as humans like to take things to the extreme. So whenever something is an extreme, that's usually when I say, hey, let's pull it back. Everyone's different. Everyone needs a different approach. I love my functional practitioner. I take supplements. I do things, right? Like I have a whole approach, but it's not the only thing and it's not the one thing I focus on. Yeah.
So the holistic piece and the mindset work around it. I love that. The intention. Beautiful. So, Grace, what would you say to the high achieving woman who's listening, who has spent years
Yeah.
pushing through burnout, pushing through the pain? What's one thing that they need to hear right now about healing?
First is you have been doing this for so long and pushing to protect yourself and to giving yourself what you think you need. So I send all the compassion and love and grace. And two, that it does take courage to look at actually, is that serving you? What's serving you? And if you're like, well, but it's serving other people, and yeah, it is serving me because I'm getting X, Y, and Z done, I would question that. Because if you're burnout, if you're not feeling well, if you feel like you just have to get through the next day, that's not living your life. And furthermore, I'll go a little bit more spiritual, that if you truly are living your most high and aligned self and life, it is best for everyone else around you as well. Even if that's hard, even if it takes a step back and people don't fully recognize it at first. So the one thing I would say is to get brutally honest about what's working and what's not, even when that's really scary to look at.
Mm-hmm. Incredible advice. And then that ripple effect once you are in that operating from your highest self, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I truly say that from just seeing it over time, but also personal experience. Really understanding that truly at the end of the day.
Yeah. So just before we wrap up, what would you say was your shift moment? What was the one shift that changed everything for you?
I'm going to have to say there's two, but they're very similar. One was truly recognizing that, oh, my physical responses, my pain that I'm feeling all over my body, the fatigue that's shutting me down and keeping me in bed, my sensitivities to food that allows me to literally only eat like 10 foods for a year. That doesn't have to be forever at all. There's healing, there's true healing, and it's not just a management process. It's a true treatment and healing process. So, there's true healing. It's not just management. I'm very specific about those words. And the second really was actually what I just said, is like, the more you can be you and like in your highest alignment, the better it helps everyone else too. And the more you'll be able to thrive in your life. Those are my two biggest shifts.
Because when we are out of alignment, our body feels that tension.
Yes.
And that friction and that stress.
Your body feels it. Everyone around you feels it. That biggest shift for me was I got divorced a couple years ago, and I really embodied that. And it's the best decision I ever made. So
incredible. Yeah. Incredible. Love that. Grace, this has been an incredible conversation. Where can our listeners learn more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, so a couple different places. My Instagram is Heal with Grace. I'm there pretty often. Same as my podcast is Heal with Grace. And then my website is elevatetherapywellness.com. I have all my offerings, and that's where the Mind Body Healing Method is, my group program.
Amazing. I want to thank you so much for being here, for sharing your insights, your expertise, and your story.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Now go make shift happen. Take care. All right, shifter, that's a wrap on today's episode of What the Shift. But here's the thing. Awareness is just the first step. The real shift happens when you decide to do something with it. So before you go back to business as usual, ask yourself, what is one thing you are done carrying? What's one shift you're ready to make? And if this episode hit home, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and send it to a woman who needs to hear this, because we shift together. Remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to take the next step. And I'll be right here next week, ready to shift with you. This is What the Shift, and we are just getting started.